Yes. With the Area 1 funding that we have, there is portion of the seawall that will be developed.
There's a slide.
It does come up in the, if you can wait, I'll go into it as we
Okay,
get
that's
to
fine.
that
Sure.
perspective. And this is the Area 1 section that will be the next phase that we would propose to do. It is scheduled to begin in fiscal year 2017, and that fiscal year 2017 is the FDOT fiscal year. So technically, FDOT fiscal year starts in 2016, July 1st of that year. So we will actually be looking at July 1st, 2016 to begin this project, this portion of the project.
Construction.
Right, and it's a total reconstruction. The reconstruction will include a new seawall, new picnic and restroom pavilions, parking, landscaping, as well as street improvements to Retta Esplanade. And again, it does begin fiscal year, their fiscal year begins July 1st, 2016.
Excuse me, Joan, this is also the area that has been redesigned per FDOT, correct?
Correct, which connects to the reason
the
why we
des-
want to do it in the phases that we've chosen.
Okay, so the design has been completed, or are they still in process?
We're still in process.
Thank you.
In process.
Again, the estimated time frame for this construction period is approximately 14 months. The last section that we propose we do is after the completion of the federally funded project, and that would include the closeout, the required mandated closeout paperwork that the FDOT will require of us. Once that is all completed, then the Area 2 from Gill Street westward to Berry Street will continue. And in addition to that, we would have the Kitty Land as, based on available funding. That would be the last project proposed for this area. So if we recap the approximate timeline construction, so it's fresh in your minds. We have the completed project from 2011. We will work with the fishing pier and the seawall beginning this year, fiscal year 2015. We will also do in this year Area 3. And then we would recommend Area 1 with the federal fund project for 2016, 2017. Once all of that is completed, we would then go back to Area 2, and we look at that beginning sometime in late 2017, 2018. So with that, we'll go into the funding portion of it, and the options and the reasoning why.
Does she have that slide up?
Question, Rachel?
Did you hit slide number 4, the seawall improvement? Did you talk about that?
Not yet.
She's coming
just
up.
coming to
It's
it.
coming up right now.
Oh, it's number 4 on mine, okay.
She hasn't gotten there yet. She's getting there.
Okay. Mine's out of order for some reason.
So if we look at the estimated, if we look at the funding for the project, we have the cost of the project for the fishing pier is $7,000. The seawall replacement is $1.1 million. Area 3 is estimated at 1.2 million. Area 2 estimated at 2.2. And Area 1 is the federally funded portion of the project, and that is just under 1.7, for a total cost of just over $6.2 million. So we have 27% of the federal funds are already allocated. We have local funds of 4.5 million, and the total project at $6.2 million. At this point, Howard, did you want to go into the funding aspect?
Will you show the slide as to why the seawall is what it is? There you go. We'll go back to that.
Okay. The area here is, because the federally funded project is replacing the seawall, there was a question as to whether or not the tie-in to the old seawall would be allowed. And to make sure that it is done correctly and it can be completed, we need to redo this portion of the seawall to tie it in to the existing federal funded project.
This seawall would need to have been done anyway, correct?
We will, yes.
Yes, I would anticipate it would have had to been done as part of the whole
At one part,
project.
correct.
Okay.
And it just makes sense to do it first so that the tie-in is there. And if we do it ahead of time, then, and are out of that area, the federal funds can be used to tie into the rest of that and do it correctly.
Yes,
But just a comment, I think you have a difference in the budget for that. Didn't you just say before that was it would be about $1.1 million? Oh, yeah, okay, 1.5, okay, that's fine.
I think we said
That's fine.
1.2, something to that effect, yes. You have to, that was the cost of it. Now you have to add in the design of the project as well. We had to add an additional for the redesign of it. We have to add that back in.
How many feet is that seawall? Do you know? I think it's about 1,200 feet, is that approximately
Mike,
right?
do you recall? I don't recall what the actual linear footage is.
Again, Mike Giardiolo from Weiler Engineering. I believe this one is close to about 1,000, and then you also have the one on the other side of the gazebo there, that's like another 500-600 feet. In total, all the way to the end, it's 1,700 feet of seawall. But a little portion was already completed, some of it's in the federal portion in Area 1, and then the bulk of it is in this area that's shown on the
So
slide.
we were talking about $1,000 a foot in that
Pretty
range.
close, and one thing to keep in mind, it's a seawall that's designed to Army Corps requirements to support wave action, and it also has a very large cap. The original design, when we were trying to save the existing seawall, the original design had a seat wall with a T at the end of it, seat wall, on the south side of the harbor walk, and in the most recent mutation of this design, we combined this seat wall with the seawall to have a big cap. So it's actually got a 5-foot wide concrete cap. It has a trench drain that allows the water to drain off of the harbor walk. So there are some other components in addition to just the vertical concrete sheet piles.
other
So-
questions? Yes, Rachel?
So there are two numbers, 1.1 and 1.5. Where are we at?
Well, we haven't bid it yet.
Well, that's a big difference. I mean, sharpen the pencil a little bit.
That's correct.
With this,
We haven't gone into the funding yet, Sharp. We're still discussing why we're doing the seawall.
Okay,
We will
but
get
what
back to
number
this.
are we using, 1.1 or 1.5?
That's the, 1.1 is the construction cost, I think, as I understand, Joan, to indicate. And the additional then would be for design? Is that-
No.
Not
No.
$400,000, hopefully
the-
not.
The design on this is very inexpensive because we're already doing details of the seawall for the DOT portion of the job. So, I mean, we're talking, I think, $4,000 for design to come up with plans, which also includes your ADA upgrades to your fishing pier and some other things. So very inexpensive design for this phase that was on the slide that was just up a second ago.
So basically, you're just going to continue down with what you're designing for Area 1?
Correct. We're gonna show, temporary tie-in because the Area 1 won't be completed, and then we'll tie into the little different seawall that we did down there at the launch area, and then show also the tie-in at the transition to the fishing pier.
Is it going to look, what's it going to look like when you get to the end of this piece, when you get to Bay Shore? Is it going to look, how's it going to look?
There will be, there will definitely be a taper because that existing cap on the, near the Bayfront Center is only about 18 inches, and our cap's not
5
only,
feet?
it's a little taller, and it's 5 feet wide.
Wow.
So there will be a transition, and we'll detail that transition to make it as, pretty as we can make it.
Yes, Tom?
so Mike, being 5 feet wide, people can be walking on the top of the seawall, or sitting on it, or even skateboarding on it, or even riding bicycles on it. I mean, is it wide enough? It is wide, sounds wide enough
Feet
to
is
accommodate all of
Wide
that.
of a sidewalk,
It-
yeah.
Yes, it is, and we've been working with the city staff as part of the ongoing design that we're working on now for skateboard deterrence and what the best way is to do that. It's kind of, it's a tricky issue because you can go overboard trying to prevent people from being up there, and you could do something that, you know, maybe isn't as aesthetically pleasing as you would like, or you could not do as much, and you could have those issues with people rollerblading, bicycling, you know, walking on top of the seawall cap.
Yes.
So will there
Rachel?
be any other barrier? Will there be a fence? Will there be a rail? Will there be any other barrier at the end of that seawall cap to the water?
There's not one proposed, no.
And there is not anything currently either.
No.
Yes, Rachel?
Do we have to have 5 feet?
No. No, it was a request, previous request from the city.
What
It
does
could be narrower.
FDOT want us to have in Area 1?
I don't think they have a preference. I think that, you know, their big requirement is that it's designed, you know, per the Army Corps requirements for wave action and scouring and those sort of issues, but the actual width of the cap, I don't think would be a requirement on their end.
'Cause that
Do
seems
we
like
have
an awfully
concerns, Jeff?
expensive.
Kim?
Okay, so this cap is 5 feet wide, and it's so people can sit there? Is that
Correct.
not facing the water?
No.
I mean, that's what I'm wondering, you know, they're gonna sit there and face Retta.
Well, they'll sit on it and put their feet over it.
Right.
I mean, that's
Sure.
another option
Right,
that they
right.
can do
Yeah.
at the same time.
I mean, I just think 5 feet is really big.
It's really big, and I'm sure it's really, you know, extending this funding to,
Right. I mean, not that I don't think it's a good idea to be able to sit there, to have a cap, but I mean, do we need 5 feet? I mean, couldn't we go with 2?
Or 3.
well, we have 18 inches on the piece that we previously did, is what Mike just said,
You
right?
do, but that one's not designed at a height that you would use as a seating wall.
Okay.
Ideally, it's at a lower height. So when we bring that up to, you know, 17 to 19 inches for a, you know, handicap compliant seating area, you know, it comes up higher, and then, you know, the wide, I think it's good to go wider than you would normally go on a seawall cap, because if somebody is sitting facing Retta and they were to fall backwards or something like that, now they have 5 feet of concrete that would catch them. Is 5 feet the actual number that's required? Maybe not, but I think it's certainly better than 18 inches or 2 feet.
Any other comments from staff? David, anything in terms of, okay, yes, Rachel?
I would like to see what this is gonna look like. I mean, I'm just trying to vision it in my head, and I mean, I'm 5'2", so I could lay down on there.
Somebody could bike over
You know, bring my sleeping bag, and I mean, I don't know.
And then how much, okay, so that's gonna be 5 feet wide, and then you're gonna have the harbor walk, which is going to be,
In that previous area, 20 feet wide.
Now, is the
lot of
cap
concrete.
overhanging on
A-
the water
A
side?
little bit, 6 to 8 inches
So
approximately.
it's not that, okay.
Yeah, and then part of it goes over the seawall sheet pile, the concrete sheet pile itself,
how high?
about 18 inches.
Okay, higher than what's existing there right now?
Give or take. The existing one kind of varies. The proposed one will be a little bit more constant, although it does rise up a little bit as you get towards the Punta Gorda Waterfront Hotel.
How high is the one behind Bayfront?
That's what I was asking.
I don't recall exactly. I would say 9 to 12 inches.
Yeah, it's really probably
Is it
9
ac-
I
inches.
believe it's right at grade.
I think there is a little bit of
No,
a
there's a
curve
little
there.
bit.
Yeah,
It's probably
it's not,
6, 9 inches.
it's not much. It's something in that range. I don't have that number off the top of my head.
But it's not the seating wall that some sort of a seating area.
Correct.
Is there seating on the landward side of the harbor walk? Will there be any seating on that? If you take the seawall and come in to 20 feet, is there any
When,
seat?
when we got the request to do this change with the seawall cap, we removed it along all of the, I don't know if you could put up a map of the whole area, along all kind of the straight shot of the harbor walk, but we did keep it, and I guess we don't have proposed design, but we did keep it around, there's a big seating area that's going to go in front of the gazebo. That's a big half circle with a big compass rose feature. If you're familiar with the design, we kept it over there, and we did keep it on the, around the pavilion area. But we didn't keep it on the long stretch that would be shown here. There would be no seat wall on the south side of the harbor walk.
So the seating is definitely just on the water side.
That is correct.
I don't know how comfortable I'm feeling with that. whole
Rachel?
arrangement.
I don't know when this change was communicated to you, but I mean, I don't, the last time we looked at the plans, I don't even recall 5-foot cap.
This
So is
a
it
while
20
ago.
plus 5?
This is a while ago.
It has been.
That's correct.
That's a lot of concrete.
That's a lot of concrete.
All right, so what is our consensus? Let's relook at this in terms of how wide we want it. I mean, what would be the maximum, 3 feet?
I mean,
I'd like to see a
I need
cross-section,
visuals, yeah.
an elevation of what we're looking at from the seawall, including the harbor walk and including any intermittent seating that might be behind that. Can we just have a couple of shots to what a cross-section would look like? Plan and
Absolutely.
elevation?
We can produce something for you to look at that would show that.
I think that would be helpful. Obviously, a number of us have not been on council when all of this was presented and discussed, and I
Well,
think
it's
we need a
changed.
refresher course.
right.
It
I mean, I
keeps
just think it's-
changing.
Yeah,
It's-
I just think that there's a lot going on there. I mean, you have bicyclers, you have walkers already, and I mean, I know it's a lot narrower than it will be, but now you're gonna have people sitting, and, I don't know,
Sunbathing.
sunbathing, and, I mean, you're really opening up an area where you could have kids playing and all kinds of stuff, and really, people are walking and riding bikes, and
I think we'd like to look at it again. So when can we do that?
We can do it in 2 weeks if you want.
That would be nice. I
You
think
want
that
us to
would,
put it on the agenda in 2 weeks?
And
We've done very well when we have adopted a plan
and stuck with it.
and got it done.
I know.
It's just taking too long for this plan.
So we will bring it back in 2 weeks, and we will discuss it again. But please, we need to come up with something in 2 weeks, because they're only going to have to keep redesigning.
And we don't want that.
And we gotta stop at some point in time. We've been really successful over the last 10 years in making a decision and getting it done.
Rachel first and then Tom.
Well, I mean, we're over budget, so that's a concern.
Well, I'm going to talk about that.
Okay, well, this is the other thing I wanted to ask. The 5-foot cap, is that being paid for in the DOT funds? Are they paying for their portion of their 5-foot cap in Area 1?
Yes,
Yes, and
But that's still a match, correct?
no,
That's fully
fully funded,
funded. Okay.
fully funded.
I mean, I just need to see what this is gonna look like. I'm just having, visions of just 25-foot concrete down the middle, down the park.
Tom?
just, yeah, if there was more intermittent seating along the landward side, you may not need as much seating or that kind of seating on the water side. So,
Or any at all.
Or any at all, yeah. And another question with regard to construction, do you anticipate this being constructed from the water side, from the land side, or both?
I would expect primarily from the land side. The similar construction that we saw when they did the one north of the Bayfront Center. They will remove the existing seawall almost in its entirety in order to get the new one in there. And they have the luxury of having pretty much all the room that they need on the landward side to do this. There will be a couple impacts. The fence will have to be shifted at the playground currently in order to do that. But, and again, it depends on the contractor that does the work. But with water depths and other issues, I would think landward would be the easiest way to get it done.
Kim?
Well, I guess in this particular park, and because I live there, so I see it all the time, I mean, it's such a great asset that we have there. And I know it is, we need to make a decision and get it done. But also, when you're looking at the different pieces, we have a lot of I get a lot of citizens' input for this area. The pickleballers would like to have their own courts there. So that's, instead of designing and redesigning and we're just kind of putting money in there. I mean, I know right now we're just talking about the seawall. If we could just get the seawall done, that would be good. But I think as we go forward, there's a lot of, I've heard people say, why do we have the basketball courts? Can't we have some volleyball courts? We have the sailing center that, and have all of that input at once so that when you're designing it, we make a decision, this is what it's going to be.
As that's part of the Area 2 project.
Right.
We have time to work on those
Right.
issues separately
I
while
just
we
wanted
move
to bring
forward
it
on
up,
some of these,
so
correct?
it's kind of out of my mouth.
Just
And-
just
Yeah.
one more thing.
And-
Yes.
I'm sorry. And also, the electricity. I mean, we've had, we're really trying to be that Christmas, have the Christmas town, the holiday, well, not Christmas, but the whole holiday season. And so even having electricity there to be able to put up some lights and do some things there. So I think we need to have a comprehensive plan and make a decision about that area after, at some point.
Are
Tom?
you, are you speaking about electricity on the seawall, or?
No, I'm
or-
talking about inside the
Okay.
park,
Okay.
you know.
Can we find out if there are other communities that have a similar type of harbor walk or seawall arrangement that we know of?
David?
David Hilson, Urban Design. As I'm sitting here and I'm listening, what we'd like to do is put together some scenarios of other communities. Just coming straight to mind, up in Tampa Bay, they have the large, where they have the Pirate Fest and everything else, the same type of situation that's going on. Havana, in Cuba, they have it. There's numerous examples, I think, that we can give you a visual reference for.
That would be,
That'd be
That would be
real-
very helpful.
We'll give that-
Thank you, David. Yes, Ray?
Are you done?
yes, ma'am.
I think what Tom is saying, what's making me think about is behind the Best Western or waterfront, Punta Gorda waterfront, that wall there where people can really sit on the hotel side is really nice. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, that people are gonna come to the park and there's, if there's fireworks or there's whatever going on, that's a place where people could sit. And I think what Tom is saying, that I'm kind of going along that line too, that type of wall, I think, is really useful. Now, whether or not I want it all the way down the entire length of the harbor walk, I don't know that that's what I want, because then that kind of restricts the access onto the actual pathway. But I just don't, I guess I'm not remembering the 5-foot cap, because that is quite large.
Okay,
It is
so
quite large.
staff is going to come back with some photographs of what it's supposed to look like, and then perhaps some other options, correct? Thank you.
Correct.
That'd be great.
Thank you, appreciate that. Now you can go on. Sorry, Howard.
Are we back to the funding, or we still got more? Okay. Assuming we did everything that we presented, and assuming the cost came in as the engineer's estimate was, assuming we took no more dollars in that we estimated, in order to do everything we've talked about, in the time frame we talked about, we have a gap of about $2 million. And how would we address that? We have a chart. In order to address the $2 million shortfall, if we wanted to do, again, everything that we talked about at those costs, the very last project in our sales tax program is Marriage Point. It is the last priority of all of the projects. We have $500,000 budgeted. Marriage Point is very functional, and that's why it received the last priority. Fisherman's Village, we have $335,000 budgeted for a connection from Fisherman's Village to our Harbor Walk. If we decide to renegotiate with Fisherman's Village for an extension of a lease or a sale, part of that negotiation could include Fisherman's Village putting aside the dollars necessary to do that harbor walk. That frees up those dollars. We have $200,000 in undesignated funds. We're applying for a grant for a US 41 ADA ramp that's currently in our sales tax program. If we receive that grant, that's $385,000 that's freed up. And if we go ahead with the parking for the impact area, the additional harbor walk parking, the Economic Development Director, Tom Patton, when he presented it, said that the county would share in those costs, and that's about, again, estimated $325,000, estimated. So there's $1.7 million of that $2 million shortfall already. And again, if we take in more dollars from our sales tax than we're projecting, and right now we are, more dollars are coming in than our projections show, that gap becomes even less. What we're recommending is we at least get in and do the fishing pier, which we have to do for the DA. And we do the seawall, if we can decide on a design for the seawall. And we hold off on Area 3, because that's not a priority right now. We can at least get in and get that done. The reason the seawall is important is that whenever we bid out the rest of Area 2, that's Kitty Land and the tennis courts and that area in there, whoever bids on that project is not going to be a seawall expert. They're going to be a park expert. And all they're going to do is sub out the seawall work and take a fee. So why not let us bid it out now, get in, get that seawall accomplished, and get out of there before the grant funding takes effect. That's the reason we're pushing to get that seawall done.
Yes, Rachel?
So are you knocking Marriage Point off the list?
Possibly.
That was one you really wanted, too. Well, you said it really needed to be done. So, Charlotte County, when they talked to us about the on-street parking, did we also say, hey, we got to redo the cul-de-sac as well?
No.
Well, that needs to be brought up as well, because if we're trying to accommodate people for that area, then we should give them the total package and let them at
That-
least consider
that's a good
what they're
point.
going to share in with us.
Good point.
That's a very good point. But I think what we're also looking at is the possibility, again, for the 1% sales tax to bring in more funding than anticipated, which would help, again, even perhaps incorporate again the Marriage Point and other items that we might want to do in the future.
I mean, or we just cut back Area 3. I mean, we're not doing a whole lot in Area 3 anyways. We just maybe reduce the parking. I mean, we have options. That's why I said hold off on Area 3, but at least get the seawall done in Area 2. We at least got to do that. Well, we would hope you would at least do that.
Right.
Okay, well, we'll come back to that then and take a look at what the options are. Yes, Kim?
I just, will ask everyone, if you have time, go over there and look at that. I mean, if we're going to have seating, it seems like it should be looking out to the water instead of looking.
And that can be added into.
I mean, only because when you're there in that area, look at what's there. I mean, it'd be too far from the tennis courts. I mean, you're just going to be staring at people riding their bikes or walking. It's not like you're like on the other side, like at the hotel. That's all I'm saying.
There's hardscaping that can be
Right.
included into that to accommodate the seating from that side
Sure.
looking out into the water.
Right, because that's our biggest asset. And
Is the water.
boat parades and everything we have.
Are you okay?
That's okay. All right. Do we have more on this, sir?
In 2 weeks, we will be bringing back to you another look at the design.
Very good.
Again,
Sorry.
please, in 2 weeks, can we at least try
Yes.
and come up?
Well, then we'll have some visual references to know what we're getting into before we charge ahead.
And before we make a commitment to that amount of concrete?
I mean, do we all feel the same? So when you do come back in 2 weeks, we're not just looking at a picture of a 5-foot seawall looking toward Breda? I mean, that we would really like to look at the water or the residents?
I would agree.
I would agree.
I'm pretty much on there, yeah.
I mean, instead of just bringing a picture back of a 5-foot that's looking at that, I don't think anybody wants that.
So this $1.1 million or $1.5 million for the seawall, whatever it ultimately is, could be considerably less if we don't go with a 5-foot wide cap on it. And we also need to make sure that the extension of the cap, as it extends landward, isn't going to interfere with a walkway. And
I think that was already planned and
Yes.
Okay.
designed
It'll
that
just
way.
be a
It's, right, it will not
Okay.
Yeah,
interfere.
it's not going to.
Okay.
It won't interfere.
Okay, are we good? Did Nancy have any comments, or do you wanted to add anything?
If you don't mind, again, Mike Jardulo for the record, just to be clear, the $1.1 million will go down, but the Area 2 cost will go up because it would now include a seat wall on the south side of the Harbor Walk. So I don't know exactly how much those costs are, but there's a balance there. So the seawall cost will go down, but the Area 2 development will go up because of an added seat wall.
I think we're talking about, if I'm hearing correctly, some intermittent seating rather than one long continuous row, so.
Absolutely. We wouldn't want
Rachel?
As far as the seawall in Area 1 and 2, is it going to be behind where the seawall is existing now, or is it going to be exactly in that same area? Because now I'm thinking 25 feet from that into the park is taking up a lot of,
We're allowed by rule to go about 12 to 18 inches waterward, so
Okay.
we try to capture a little bit more land when we can do that, but it's not much. So the new seawall will basically be in the same place, if not a hair more waterward.
okay.
All right, are we ready to move on?
Yes.
Do you have anything else on this? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, staff. Thank you for
Thank you.
your patience. We will move now on to our next item of new business, Cooper Street Park operating hours.
Staff has met with
I think
The-
it's going-
new Operation Cooper Street. We've met with representatives of the NEACP, representatives of the Tribune Woods community. Why are we meeting? We're meeting because the Cooper Street Park is a public park. New Operation Cooper Street is a nonprofit organization that operates New Operation Cooper Street. We've had requests from folks in the community, what are the park rules? So we put together some options to consider for operating Cooper Street Park. When the new Operation Cooper Street Center is operational, the park is off limits for other than the kids that are at the center. That's a given. However, when the center is not being operated with kids, the park should be open. And our recommendation is that it's open from dawn until 10 p.m. 10 p.m. is when the lights to the basketball courts go off. And that the park the gates be unlocked during that time. New Operation Cooper Street will manage the pavilion. If there's rented, they'll be able to manage the rentals there. Basically, they're going to manage it. And that at 10 o'clock at night, when it closes, our police patrol, just like they do at Ponce, they can close the gates. And be opened up at dawn, other than when New Operation Cooper Street is operating. We have the president of the Cooper Street Board in the audience to handle any questions that you may have, Chris Dollinger. But that is our proposal, and I guess what we would have to do is either do a resolution or an ordinance putting this in effect, if you approve of this.
Which do you recommend?
I think we standardly do that by ordinance.
Yeah. But we would follow through on that. But this is what we've come up with. We think it's a reasonable compromise to get, right now, people use the park, they climb over the fence. It's a very small fence, so let's make it.
Open. My question would be, you have that center will handle the facility rental requests unless the event is large and needs to be permitted by the city per established guidelines. Can you clarify that?
Well, if there's an event that's going to have 1,000 people, it goes through the DRC, Development Review Committee. I say 1,000 people, but yeah, good. That's what that means.
Okay. And new Operation Cooper Street Board has no problems with this, I assume?
No, we're in favor of it.
Questions, comments?
If they're okay with it, I'm okay with it. I think it makes sense, so then the kids aren't jumping the fence.
Right, right.
Or if any of the adults want to play in the park, that's fine as well.
Is there a pickleball court there?
No, it's a tennis court, and if the pickleballers ever give us an answer, we can certainly turn it into pickleball as well, but we haven't heard anything back.
Right, we asked them. They had asked if they could, and Chris said yes, so we're just waiting. I'm going to meet with them next week, so.
Sounds good, okay.
The pickleballers really want their own courts.
Yes. It's crowded. They've sent me videos. I mean, it's a big deal.
Well, did you notice the Y now has pickleball too at the Punta Gorda Club YMCA? So, I mean,
It is a game that,
it's not all on the city to
Oh,
provide.
no, they're, I read where, I think it is in Englewood. I don't know who operates it. I don't know if it's the Y out there or whatever, but they took some tennis courts and they got rid of the tennis and completely redid it into pickleball. Pickleball is the in sport.
It's a big deal.
how many of you play pickleball?
It's not the in sport here.
Not here. That's why they're here, and they're not out there
Gotta
playing
get with
pickleball.
it.
And back when we started Harbor Walk, it was bocce, and now it's already switched to pickleball.
Now it's gone from bocce to pickleball.
Okay, are we then in agreement that an ordinance should be prepared to support the opening of Cooper Street Center?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we
Okay.
don't need any motion on that, do we?
No.
Mikhail probably has it already drafted. so.
Okay, sounds good. We will now move on to the discussion regarding the use of boat cradle structures in rear yards within the special residential overlay district. Okay.
Good morning. For the record, Terry Tubbs, zoning official. This topic came up, one of the code officers was doing an inspection regarding a complaint on another property, and when she went onto the complainant's property to look at the other issue, she looked across the corner and observed this watercraft was sitting on this cradle in the rear yard of the property. And so she sent a courtesy letter to the property owner and advised that watercraft cannot be stored in the yard and that it has to be on the davits or in the water or on a lift. And the property owner contacted the Canal Maintenance Division and was asking questions about using the davits to store the watercraft off of the ground. Due to the age of these particular davits, these are older ones, there were concerns about the weight of the vessel. If the plug was left in, no cover on it, it rained, that it could put too much pressure on the seawall and cause the seawall to kick out in that area. He did indicate that this particular area is the original seawall. So we have did a little bit of research. What they call the super davits. The old ones are legacy, and the new ones are super davits. That's what I learned. The new super davits, the engineering for those was dated in 1993. So the newer type of davit has been around for quite some time. There was no concern about supporting a vessel on the new super davits with, because they are designed in such a manner that they don't put any strain on the seawall itself. It's all supported by a huge concrete slab that's under the ground. So there wasn't the concern with that. But then the question comes, what do these people do with, if they don't have a lift, they don't have another, and they want to get the vessel out of the water so that, it's not collecting the barnacles, what are the options? In this case, this property owner did build, a nice structural little cradle. He's put gravel inside that area. I don't know exactly how far it is from the seawall, but it looks relatively close to the seawall. And he indicated it's been there for 6 or 7 years. It's not something that we just, it happened to be where the code officer was, that she happened to see it. There were a couple of newer davit permits that were issued. One was on Riding Rocks and one was Whippoorwill. And I think it was included in your pictures or in your packet. The watercraft is sitting essentially in the rear yard, and that one actually, based on the permits in the system, was a newer one. And then that particular one is a single smaller davit just for the jet ski. But it does end up where you've got the watercraft sitting in the rear yard, which is specifically in conflict with what it says in the Special Residential Overlay District about how watercraft can be stored.
Sorry, could you go back to the previous picture for 1 second?
Because that's not really clear. You don't have anything larger on that one, do you?
Yeah, I actually do. Ah, this one. That one's from across the canal, and I think, oh, here we go.
Is that like their dinghy? Possibly?
That's a fair size one.
Yeah, it is. But they-
Is there, excuse me, is there a dock adjacent to where the vessel is stored right now in this situation? There is. So that vessel could be sitting on the dock rather than the back of the property? Is that,
This watercraft is probably too large to sit on
Appears so.
the dock. Yeah, we probably need a separate lift. This particular watercraft isn't really the one in question. That one is at this location, so you've got a fair-sized dock and another watercraft out here in the water, and actually a dinghy there. So this is an addition to the other, in this particular case. With the discussion of the cradles was things that can be used for cradles. At the meeting, I heard people had seen people basically bracing up the watercraft with concrete blocks. Some said, well, you could use an old boat trailer, take the wheels off of it. Now you've got the boat trailer sitting there, and then there was concerns about the rust. So, what specifications, if it was something that you wanted to consider, what kind of specifications would you want to put on, a cradle if you wanted to allow it at all?
Comments, Kim?
I don't live in that area, but if I did, I wouldn't want to look at it. I mean, what does the citizens think of that?
Now,
Is the
was-
real question. I mean,
This was not brought before the canal advisory committees, or has it?
oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes, I've taken it to both the Punta Gorda Isles Canal Advisory Committee as well as Burnt Star Isles Canal Advisory Committees. And both committees, they can understand the concern because they don't want to put additional stress on the seawalls because of the cost of, replacing them, but can also appreciate the cost to a property owner. This is actually the one in question that's lifted on the Davits waterway, on the water side. So they, their recommendation primarily was to determine what location in the yard that a cradle would be acceptable, where it wouldn't put any additional pressure on the seawall, so that you could take the weight off of the old legacy davits, but that it would have to be by special permit, and that, they would have to determine the specifications, then, and decide what they wanted, or what, unless it was specifically written into the ordinance, what was permitted to be used as a cradle. But it only be allowed on properties where the older legacy davits were still in use.
Only on those particular properties. We are a boating community, and this is a very difficult situation in which we take a look at areas where we do not want to look at our neighbors' old boats or their watercraft sitting on their lawns. Maybe that's where we need more greenery around our own homes, I'm not sure, but comments, questions? Yes,
So,
Howard?
sorry.
Councilmember Prafke, after speaking with Gary Brewster, who is the chair of the Burnt Star Isles Canal Advisory Committee, I agree that a boat cradle should be allowed through special permit only if the property owner cannot install a boat lift and has no other option available. The cradle should be an option of last resort. The davits used must be the kind that do not put pressure on the seawall. We are a boating community, and we want to encourage use of watercraft. This solution may prevent putting additional strain on the seawall.
In this particular case here that we're looking at, this photo, it appears that there are large davits, and they use those davits then to pull the boat over and put it on the cradle. So they don't keep it on the davits, they put it on the cradle instead.
Put it on the cradle when it's out of the
Now, these davits appear to be strong, and are these the current ones? Are these the new ones? These are the old ones?
There's no record of a current permit for the davits. The property owner indicated that when he purchased the property, he did hire a marine contractor to inspect them, made sure that the cables and everything were in good shape. So he did have some maintenance work done on them to ensure that they would lift the weight of his vessel. But he doesn't want to store his vessel in the air.
Yes, Rachel?
So the picture you showed after this one, the one where the boat was hanging over the water, that's perfectly legal, correct?
Correct.
And that's a new style?
No,
No, that's
that
an old
one's
style.
On the old style. Mhm.
And, sorry.
And my other concern was like, we don't even let people put trees within 6 feet of the seawall. Why would we let them set their boat there?
Correct.
I mean, that's a conflict.
Tom?
Are we dealing with only the older davits that put extraordinary pressure on the seawalls that might be allowed to put their boats on the land? Are we limiting it to that type of a davit, or are we talking a broader discussion?
From what I understood from the Canal Advisory Committees, they did want to limit it to, the ones that still had the older davits that were still, in use. Because in cases where the canal maintenance contractor has replaced the seawall in certain areas, they've actually taken the davit part out with it, or the davit pad went in the water when the seawall itself was replaced. So, over time, they'll eventually be gone, but there's still quite a few of them. From what they told me at the Canal Advisory Committee, there are still a lot of the older davits that are in use.
Yes, Rachel?
But if they're not functional, how do we know? I mean, you say they may be gone, but they may sit there for 30 years just in somebody's backyard without any boat. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to grandfather the old ones in when you see what they're doing with them. Even if they were to put the boat on the dock, it would still, I mean, we say that you're allowed to store watercraft on the dock, correct?
Yes, and it would be, I believe, a smaller watercraft than this particular one, because how large and how wide a dock can be is limited as well. So, and with something that, has it's not like a flat bottom.
But like you were saying, what would happen if somebody brought in the trailer without the wheels on the dock and set the boat on there? Would that be legal right now?
On the dock?
Yes.
No.
Oh, on the dock.
Yeah, on the
Would
dock.
it be,
I don't think
and
so.
it would not be legal in the backyard either, would it?
No.
Definitely not in the backyard.
So, this-
Go ahead.
this picture that we're looking at currently, the type of davits that are being utilized here, are they putting extraordinary pressure on the seawall?
There's a concern from the Canal Advisory Committees that they would be.
Do we have
We don't
any
have an
engineers? We have
no.
no engineers'
No, we don't
comments
have
or-
any engineer's report that says that. It is just a concern that was raised by the canal maintenance supervisor initially, and that's why we did go to the boards. It just happened to come up at a time where the board meetings were scheduled and we could get them right in, so we did just go ahead and do that part.
Bear in mind, this is the standard way of storing a boat that's on a davit. It's like suspended over the water, not put onto the land.
Correct.
So theoretically, the davits are designed for that purpose, and hopefully it was also designed to take into consideration impacts to the seawall. We don't know that for sure, but there's nothing different about this than what's been done for many, many years.
Yes.
So we wouldn't have, if all of the other boat owners that had the davits just decided to not store their boat on the land, but left them in a position that this boat is in, this is what we would see universally.
Correct,
Correct.
and this is what we currently see almost universally.
Okay.
And so the question is, do we want to allow cradles on the land?
Correct.
I would say no.
I live there, and I don't think so. I'm not liking that idea. How do you mow the lawn around the cradle? How do you keep it trimmed and neat looking?
Well, and the point that was discussed earlier is that, there's a lot of restrictions with what you can do within that 6 feet of the seawall. I mean, many people want to put patios and other things. And, you know, we would have to consider whether or not we would want to then open the door for those as well.
I wouldn't. I don't know what kind of language we need to specify that this, you know, this is legal, but to bring it all the way onto the land, that is illegal.
We already have that.
Right.
You're not allowed to store a boat in the backyard.
So
We
then
really
that-
don't
that's.
I'm okay with that.
So then.
No, no,
then there is-
what we're asking you to consider is whether you want to amend the status quo to allow for a cradle
No.
in this area.
I don't think so.
No?
I don't think so. You know, again, most of us own boats, and we all have to deal with the cost of how we maintain them and where we keep them, et cetera. And that's the cost of owning a boat, is keeping it out of the water, or keep it in the water and continue to clean the bottom. So it's, I think we're all faced with that, yes?
And floating docks are now allowed, correct? Like for the jet skis? So there are other options. I mean, that's not your only option for bringing your jet ski out of the water. Because I know when they first came onto the scene, the city was kind of hesitant to allow those, but they are allowed now. So, I mean, there are different scenarios that people, because I was thinking about that jet ski
Yeah.
that you showed. So there are, you know, options.
Would you go back to the jet ski slide, the one where it's on the grass? Stop right there first, if you don't mind. Now that is a boat that is partially suspended by a davit, and it's actually supported by some blocks or something, but it's resting on the ground. That is currently prohibited. If the owner just raised that boat up so that it wasn't touching the ground, and the same thing with the picture of the jet ski, right now, we have nothing that would prohibit that, and I'm not really sure we could even craft language that would prohibit it. But, so, if there was some benefit for getting it out of the water and onto suspended over the land side, that is permissible under our current codes. But once you set it on the ground, that would be prohibited.
I'm okay with
And
that.
unless you think that there's some reason that we should prohibit suspending it as well, we'll just not even address the issue.
Now, that's a jet
And
ski.
there's a jet ski, and and that's sitting on the ground. If they just raised the jet ski up a little bit so it hovered over the ground, that would not be prohibited. The way it's sitting now on the ground is prohibited, just so you know.
And I'm guessing this was fully permitted, this little jet ski lift, and so I'm okay with that.
Maybe what we do need to look at is, again, future permitting, so that if we're going to be using davits, and even for this jet ski, to me, a floating dock would have been a much nicer option, unless they do not have the triangle space, you know, the diagonal that they need for keeping their boat and boats, their watercraft within that triangle.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm uncomfortable seeing a boat that's on a cradle stored over land, whether it's sitting on the land or whether it's hoisted up
Over the land.
2 inches or 6 inches above the land. That is troubling to me.
And yet this was permitted and allowed.
One of the distinctions to bear in mind, too, I mean, we could regulate the heck out of this, and we'll certainly draft whatever it is that the city council wishes, but, you know, the immediate concern that we had with respect to cradles is that now you're putting a structure in the zone that's supposed to be left open for maintenance of the seawalls. So I am less concerned, just from that perspective of someone who's hovering the boat over the area, because presumably it would be easier to get that boat out of the way than what we have to deal with if there is a cradle or other structure that's permanently affixed to the ground.
Carolyn, I have a question.
Yes, Rachel?
Under this ordinance, chapter 26, section 3.13, that says, Number 2, watercraft may be stored on a lift or davits or in the water. I mean, if, basically, that's being stored on davits, but it's also touching the ground, do we have to have additional language saying, even if it's on the davits, but it's touching the land, it's, I mean, because basically they could say, well, that's on the davit, and that's allowed.
I think we've rendered a reasonable interpretation that in light of the other restrictions about storage of boats on the
In the
ground, in
yard,
the yard,
okay.
that being on the davit suspended, even if it's a couple of inches, would not be a violation of that
Okay.
provision.
Could we possibly just add on davits over water?
We could do that. I mean, if we
So in
certainly
other
we
words,
could.
if that was turned around and that boat was hanging over the water instead of over the land,
It meets the code then, does it not?
that would meet.
I think it would meet closer to the intent of the code.
And I'm not sure if that small addition would be viable or,
Oh, it's-
and
it's-
again, I understand about not putting so many restrictions, and yet at the same time, if we have everyone putting boats in their backyard, on davits that hang over, I mean, you have one here, but he could have 6 of them lined up.
No, don't get me wrong. We'll draft and put whatever you want. I'm just trying to ascertain what is it we're trying to achieve, and making sure that the regulation then achieves that objective.
I have another question. If they were to pick that jet ski up and there was a dock right there and they were to set it down on the dock, that would be allowed?
Yes.
Okay.
And that would be preferable from a aesthetic, I think, and a visual kind of thing for any of the neighbors as well.
I would say it should be on the dock or over the water. I
I
mean,
mean, it sounds like we already have it.
not over the water.
Not
Well, not
quite,
over the
because
water.
according to what David is saying,
Correct.
this is acceptable,
Right, oh.
Yes.
if it was just raised up a couple inches.
Yes.
Okay. We can
All right, so if we modify that ordinance to that effect, there was one other thing that I saw in the ordinance, and since my computer keeps going to sleep on me, but there was information that roof overs were not being included. There was something in the ordinance about a roof over. And since we have included the roof overs with regard to pergolas, if we're going to take that out completely, then that would be unnecessary.
It's not on this agenda.
Was that roof over with respect to a structure on the dock, or?
It might have been regarding the cradle, I'm not sure. I'm sorry, I don't,
We'll look for it.
would you mind? Thank you. Yes. All right, why don't we take a 10-minute break? Actually, why don't we till 10 after 11?
This-